Good morning and a freilich Chanukah to everybody. And welcome to Tanya Today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you, actually, from my home in Montreal, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We say hello today to Davina and Liba in New York. Good morning. Andrea is with us in Phoenix. Erica, good afternoon to you in Norway. Nitin is in Canada, shalom. Darren in the Philippines, good evening. Casey is in Missouri, and Deborah is not certain, but welcome. Aska, I think Deborah and Aska are two new people. Welcome to both of you, if I'm not mistaken. Andrew in New Jersey, welcome. Eugenia in Calgary, good morning. June is in Australia, good evening. Zara is in Malaysia, alaikum shalom. Michael is in Germany, good afternoon. Susan in Scranton is with us. John in North Carolina. Diane is with us in Arizona. Julie in Florida. David in California. Leah in Florida also. Miriam is in Colorado with us. Mil Boker Tov, Yan in Mexico. Good morning. Batya in Montreal, and David in Montreal. Welcome. Tim in Texas. Good morning, Boker Tov. And Michael is with us in Virginia. And we have here with us on Clubhouse. We have Vilma, we have Batya, we have David, Luz, Celeste, Liana, Tia, Josh, Tim, Andra, Margot, Moshe, Joshua, Salina. Salina. Okay. And we have also Yantatilla Benta and Kate, Marlene, Shebit, Akoy on Instagram. Okay. We continue. We are going to do today the entire second chapter. In the previous one, the bottom line in chapter 1 was to bring out nefashos, two souls. And now we're going to hanefesh hashenis b'Yisrael, yichelek elaka mima. The second soul of a Jew is a part of God. And that's a medrash actually, and the Alter Rebbe adds the word mamish, literally. In other words, it's not a figurative idea, it is a literal idea. Where do we see that idea? That this second soul is a part of God rather than creation of God, it's a part of God. So we see that by Adam when he was given a soul. That God said he blew into him, he blew into him the breath of life. And when someone blows, right, like you're blowing balloons for your daughter's birthday or your son's birthday, right? I mean, probably people don't do that anymore, but back in the day, how many balloons could you blow? Not too many, because it comes from a deep place to be able to do that. It takes a lot of energy, power. Hence we don't do it anymore. Such a weak generation. Can't even blow balloons. I'm just kidding. In any case, but with the metaphor of blowing, it's coming from a deep place. As opposed to talking, you don't have to use that much energy and that much breath in talking. So when God talks the world into being, it's coming from an external relative to the internal part, which is that blowing. Right, so it's coming from the inwardness. That's the metaphor. So that's how we see it with Adam and his creation. Okay. Allegorically, we see further that the Jewish souls, it says, they arose in divine thought. as opposed to everything else in creation, is from divine speech, right? God said, let there be light, and there was light. And as it's written, it says about B'ni B'chor Yisrael. Israel is my firstborn child. You are children unto God, the Lord. So that's a metaphor again. That's a metaphor to understand something. To understand what? Just as the child is derived from, and here we're taking this, again, it's a metaphor, because a child comes from a father and a mother, but the mother's part we're gonna discuss later. Okay. First, we need to again, it's a metaphor. So that child is derived from the father's brain, from the thought, from the brain. Now, just briefly, even though it comes from a seed, from semen, right? And it comes from the egg of the mother also, right? It gets fertilized. But the activity, and something we're going to actually, at the end of this chapter, tie in, that the sexual activity, that even though it's semen and physical, actually starts with the mind, begins with the brain, and the intelligence of the individual, the thoughts and the wisdom of the person. So what does that mean? That's a metaphor. That's a metaphor. That the point over here is we're dealing with metaphor. So that means that this soul, deriving from God's thought and his wisdom. Okay. What does that mean? So God's wisdom, Maimonides, Rambam says, Hu Amada, Hu Ayedea, Hu Ayedua. God, he in his knowledge, simultaneous, he is the knower, he is the knowledge, and he's the known. In the human condition, it's three separate things. My soul is the knower of something, my brain is the tool of knowledge, and the known is, I know that I'm teaching right now, right? I know that 2 + 2 = 4, right? By a human being, all three things are separate. They work together, but they're separate from each other, not by God. He is one. And as Rambam says, we don't have the power to comprehend that. How could you be you're the knower, the known, and the knowledge at the same time? We don't get that. Well, God's thoughts are not our thoughts. His ways are not our ways, so we don't get it, right? That's for sure. Now, in a note, the Alter Rebbe brings that there's a whole debate about this teachings of Maimonides. But he says that all of the Kabbalists agree with the Rambam. They agree with the Rambam, even though there is those that say, no, God can't be defined by knowledge, by wisdom. You can't define him by that. So the truth is, we're only talking about this level in the divine after a contraction from the infinite of God. That's true. The infinite of God is beyond anything, but God contracts upon himself to have divine wisdom, divine knowledge, and it is very much removed from him, but at the same time, and this is the paradox, it's totally one with him. In other words, in his wisdom and knowledge, you get him. You are bound up and attached to the essence of God, to the infinite of God. Interesting. What does that mean? It means that every soul, this godly soul, is bound up, period, with God, the essence of God, by way of Chachma, divine wisdom. Divine wisdom, again, God is one with, his essence and infinite being is one with. And therefore, the godly soul is totally bound up and one with God. Now, if that's the case, though, don't we see that there are different kinds of souls? We're not all the same. We see that there's different kinds of levels of people. We're not all uniform in our divine soul. So how do we understand that? For example, the patriarchs, Moses, their souls are far superior than us, than me at least, in our generation, right? We're like the heels compared to them, that they're the brain and the head. Likewise, in every generation, you have righteous people. They're far above and beyond, right? So how do we understand that if you're rooted in the same place, right? In the metaphor, and we've got a bunch of metaphors over here, right? Of the Father's wisdom that gives rise to the child, God's wisdom that gives rise to the divine soul. So how do we understand that? So the Alter Rebbe explains, this is another part of the analogy, and that part is the woman who, through 9 months of gestation, develops the essence of that soul into a brain, a heart, a right arm, a left leg, and a toenail, and everything else, right? In other words, you can come from the same seed, you can come from the same place, and yet your soul can develop into various parts of the fulcrum of the Jewish people. That is like one body. To some of us are the right leg, some of us the left arm, some of us might be just the fingernail. It's all bound up in the same source, right? And it is being nurtured from the same source in the divine. It's being nurtured, right, in the same source. And even after that child is born, it's still bound up to its original source in the Father's brain. Remember, mother too, but for sake of the metaphor, we're talking about our Father in heaven. And the Father being the seed, the mother being the 9 months of gestation. Even though she has the egg too, and that's, it's there. But again, for purposes of the metaphor. But how beautiful this metaphor is, really. So, even after the child is born, it's still bound up to, right? It still has an essential bond to its original source in the Father. So even after we become a soul, because we're talking about a divine soul, but now we're a divine soul in a body, right? So you might say, oh, maybe we lost our that connection. No, still have it. That divine connection, the soul being a divine entity, even though that's a created being, but it's a divine entity that is still connected to its original source, to God. The infinite of God, by way of Chokhmah, the brain. But now the Alter Rebbe takes us further, the metaphor. How? How are you taught? How are you indeed connected? Well, think about it. Is my fingernail today literally connected to my father? Or for that matter, mother? In a way, yes, because it's where it comes from. But what's really connected? My brain. Because it's in your brain that you get, who you are, so to speak, right? It's all there. Because in your brain is the you of you. Right? So it's by way of the brain. And of course, as the brain today is what's nourishing and giving vitality to the entire body, including my fingernail. Right? And allowing, therefore, the entire full-come body to be connected to its original source, our Father in heaven. But now let's take that metaphor further. If the body we're talking about now is the entirety of the Jewish people, right? So in the entirety of the Jewish people, we have, as we said earlier, right? Before we were talking about in utero, how, during the 9 months of gestation, you have a soul that is one with God, that is from the innermost part of God, not part of the creative force of creation, of speech, but as the metaphor of breath, it's coming from a deeper place from within the innermost, not a creation, but a part of, right? Then how do we have all different types of souls? Is because in utero, in other words, before our soul even came down into this world, into a body, it went through the various worlds, and as a result, picked up things that made it less of a connection, or less, what's the word I'm looking for? Apparent its connection, or less transparent to your source, right? Fingernails is literally very, very non-transparent to its source, right? You can cut your fingernail, and it doesn't hurt. But your brain is. So now, in the metaphor of the brain now, that when you have a full child born, and that child is connected by the brain to its original source and our Father in heaven. So who's the brain? Well, the brain is, of course, the tzaddikim, the great scholars, the great holy people of the generation. They're the brain. And through them, you get vitality. And that's what it says, the Mishnah says, that one should cleave. How do you cleave onto God? The verse says they should cleave onto God. Well, how do you do that? How do you cleave onto God? So how can we do that? So the sages say, well, to Torah scholars, if you cleave onto those who have the Shekhinah with them, the divine presence with them, they're transparent to the divine, then you will be connected also to the divine. In parentheses, the Alter Rebbe says, how about those who rebel against these holy, righteous people? Go against them. How do they get their vitality? Now we're saying what? The vitality is coming from the great scholars of the day, or more importantly, the great holy people who are scholars of the day, right? They're the brain. And they're giving vitality to the rest of the body of the Jewish people. But if someone is rebelling, how does it get its vitality? It's like, when you have a limb in your body that doesn't want to receive vitality from the brain, right? There's a disconnect, right? There's a disconnect here. So the Alter Rebbe explains that they do get vitality, but it's from Bechinas Acharayim, it's from the backside. They're getting it from the backside. They're not getting it face to face from God's holiness. They're getting from the tzaddik's backside, that therefore they're not getting it direct. In conclusion of this chapter, which is so much here, the Zohar says that the essential factor is that one should conduct themselves in a holy manner during sexual union, because then you create the garment of the soul for the individual. So Alter Rebbe says, well, we need to understand that's not speaking about the soul itself, because the soul itself comes from above. That's totally from God. But the parents, their actions when they have relations, sexual relations, and their appropriate thoughts and the way they conduct themselves in a holy manner, then what they create is a lavush, a garment for the soul. The soul itself comes from God above, right? That comes from the essence of God. But the parents can have what's the word? An effect on this child based again on sexual conduct that produces a garment, not a soul, but a garment. Therefore, we have to be very careful when a person is having relations that it should be sanctified because of the garment that is made for that child, and the child will live with that garment. Okay, let's unpack this. Ooh, a lot here. Whoa. So first of all, this is something that defies this world. And we're going to learn more about how it expresses. Right? In chapters 2 through 5, we're speaking about the divine soul. But we're speaking about the divine soul in a manner of understanding what its makeup is. How it's going to affect you and how you can bring it into your life. That will be later on. That won't be in these chapters. I mean, I shouldn't say that. It is, but later on we'll have a unique understanding of this soul. And I want to tell you that very seldom, listen here, my Jewish brothers and sisters, very seldom are you using, or am I using my divine soul? Very seldom. So even though we got it, very seldom are we accessing it. We are accessing probably more often than not either our animal soul, of course, which we're familiar, but there's another soul that the Alter Rebbe doesn't really speak too much about. A couple times throughout Tanya. It's called the Nefesh Maskelis. It's the intellectual soul. And most of the things that we do when we triumph good over evil, right over wrong, is not necessarily motivated by our divine soul, by our holy soul. It is probably more often motivated by our intelligent soul, which a non-Jew has, just like we have. We have it, a non-Jew has it. And for most of us, that's where our struggle will be. Through the rationality of the Nefesh Maskelis and the irrationality. The lustfulness, the laziness, the boastfulness, the impatient haughtiness of the animal soul. So it's going to be usually a struggle between the two. We'll understand more as we go forward in the next chapters how that is the case. But I just want, even though we're talking about this, so you might say, oh, so what's the difference that we have this? First of all, this is what defines us as a Jew, which we're going to deal more later, so I don't want to stop. I'm not going to go off on that now. This is what defines us as a Jew, right? And it's something you can't rid yourself. Now, it may be in exile. It may not be affecting, just like when you're in prison. When a prince is in prison, he's still a prince. But he can't act like a prince because he's in prison. He can't be princely. In the true sense, right? But he doesn't lose his status as a prince. So likewise, our godly soul is that. It doesn't. If we don't access it doesn't mean we don't have it. It just doesn't. It means it's not affecting us as it could. But we're going to learn more about that idea as we go along. I don't want to dwell too much. So that's one important point that I wanted to make. And the second is the metaphors over here are so beautiful. are so beautiful. And we see clearly the idea of male and female, how it is sort of the crux or the foundation of everything. And therefore, to disrupt that, no, two males, two females, no, sorry, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work with anything and everything that is of the creative process. Now, I don't want to get off on this, but because we can discuss it another time. Not denying someone's feelings and so on. But we have many feelings that can be our challenges that we need to deal with, as opposed to a God-given right. We see very clearly from these metaphors, for a soul to be to give rise, you need the male and the female parts that give it its defining qualities. That's just derech haggadah. Well, by the way, I don't want to get off on that too. On that really, probably should discuss that all on to its own. It's not to say again, not to empathize with someone with their struggles, but struggle. So, for me, something special about this chapter is we see what it means, a connection to our Rebbe. The Rebbe is the brain. The rest of the Jewish people are the full body. By the way, I don't think it means that non-Jews also don't have. They also have connection. But as I mentioned again that this book, the Alter Rebbe, is writing for Jews. So there is also non-Jews can have a connection with the Rebbe. Absolutely, no question. But here the idea is so beautiful that the brain is responsible for the entirety of the body, right? The nervous system and the flow of everything. So a righteous person, a holy person, a Rebbe. Actually, Rebbe is an acronym for Rosh B'nai Yisrael. Rosh, head of the Jewish people. Literally the head, because the head gives vitality. So by being connected to the head of the Jewish people, you're connected to God. As the verse says, that you should cleave to God. And the sages said, well, how are you supposed to do that? For simple people. So the sages say, cleave to those who are truly cleaving. Those who are the brain. The righteous, holy people. The Rebbe. This is amazing. That connection that we have and that we can build on and have as deeply and as much as we want. But it's a reality. So much so that I heard from my teacher, Rabbi Khan, of blessed memory. He's passed away this summer. I've mentioned him a few times. That he says, he's a great scholar in Hasidic teachings. He says, this question that the Alter Rebbe asks, where do those who defy the righteous ones get their vitality from? Because they're denying them. So he says, why is that a question? It's because in the end, the full body has to get vitality, right? The brain's got to give it to every part. So what if there's a part that's fighting it? In the metaphor, right? It still needs to get, so it's getting. Just not getting it. So to speak, face to face. It's getting it from Acharayim, from the backside. from the backside, the hind part, as it were. That's what they're getting the right talent, but they're still getting it. Still have to get it from the righteous person. It still has to come from the brain. I don't know about you. It's powerful. Let's get to some questions, comments, thoughts. So first I'm going to start here on Facebook because I don't want to lose the feed. Remind you 2 questions before. How does this relate to when the angels teach the whole Torah in the fetus before it is born? Yeah, because it's a holy soul, so when it's in utero, in the mother, the angel is teaching it Torah. Exactly. Yep. Yep, exactly. That brings out more our inherent connection to Torah. That idea. Well, Leah, for someone who converted, did they convert because the soul is Jewish and they were able to tap into that somehow? So, it's interesting. The Talmud says, when it speaks about a convert, it doesn't say a non-Jew that converted. The term is Gesh and is Gayer. A Ger, a convert that converted. Meaning someone who converts has a spark of a Jewish soul in them. It's not a flame. They have to go through the process of conversion according to Jewish law. Of course, it has to be according to halacha, by a proper, accepted, based in court of Jewish law, and that you accept Torah and mitzvahs. And then you get this Jewish soul. From a spark becomes a flame. So a non-Jew has not a spark, but a convert had a spark that became a flame. How do you know who's who? Well, I guess until they convert, you don't know. Unless, a Rebbe could know, but I wouldn't know. So yeah, a non-Jew could have a spark that could become a flame. Now, when that person converts, by the way, they are not 50% Jewish, they're not 99.9, they're 100%, as much as I'm 100% Jewish. At least I think I am. My mother's Jewish, my mother's Jewish, her mother's Jewish. So, as a result, someone who converts is 100% Jewish, and again, can't be half pregnant, can't be half Jewish. How is that so? Because it's God who gives the soul. It's coming by way of a Jewish mother or someone who converts, but mother's not giving the soul. God's giving that soul. It's a part of Him. Thank you, Leah, for that question. Alice, could you define more the garment of the newborn and how that explains that Ishmael and Esau, as they have holy parents? I mean, getting a garment from holy parents, because they acted holy in sexual relations, doesn't take away somebody's freedom of choice. You still have freedom of choice. You still have freedom of choice. So that's important. So they have freedom of choice, Esau and Ishmael. I'm not certain more about the garment, to be quite honest. Okay. John, the source of Atzilus in the Ein Sof, does the Ein Sof undergo Tzimtzum before entering Atzilus? Absolutely, John. Yes. Because Atzilus it's an emanation of God. It's not a creation of God, but it's an emanation. It's not the essence of God. So of course it has to go through a contraction at tzimtzum. Very good question. Thank you. Lori, a Jewish woman and a non-Jewish father are having a child together. How is the soul of the child who is Jewish? So if it's a Jewish woman, then the child is Jewish, 100%. 100% the child is Jewish if the mother is Jewish. Yeah. Again, there's no halfway points here. Other. Okay. Will there still be the same after Mashiach comes? Yeah. Does having Jewish blood have any advantage to your conversion? No. Absolutely not. Maybe it'll even detract because you're going to think, oh, I'm deserving of something here. No, you have to go through the process, and I don't know if it's detracting. It doesn't help. It may be an encouragement for the person, but it's not. Doesn't mean anything. You need to go through the process and devote yourself to it. Okay. I don't see on Instagram anything. All right, Eliana. Please share with us.
Good morning.
Good
Just
morning.
a quick question on section when the Alpha Larry was talking about the vitality and clinging to God, that idea of Devakut. How does that relate with meditation? Obviously, when someone meditates, they're not becoming the brain, so to speak, using that metaphor. But what does meditation do? Does that access our divine soul?
Good question. It could. It's possible. It depends what you're meditating upon. Yeah, that's our next course in JLI. Exactly. Jewish meditation. Exactly the next course. How to meditate in the Jewish way that you can access your divine soul. Because, as I said, it's not so simple. And meditation is a key for that. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And that's a promo. That's starting in February. You don't want to miss it. I mean, you got some time. If you go to JLI Montreal, you can join me and many others, actually. Eliana has been a part of, and others have been a part of. So, you'll learn more about that. Eliana, something else?
That was it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Joshua.
Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Fine.
Alaikum shalom.
Hanukkah Sameach. I have a quick question.
Sure.
Like a Jewish married couple, chas v'shalom, if they do not follow the laws of Nida,
Right.
then how would it affect the child that is conceived, and what would be the impact on the soul level? That's my question.
Right. Okay. Very good. So then that was the last part that we spoke about. The essence of the soul, it's a Jewish mother again, and then you didn't affect the essence of the child, their identity, the fact that they have a divine soul that is a Jewish soul that is very much them. What has happened is the levush, the garment, which garment is, the idea of expression. The expression of that soul will be tainted. It will be tainted. So actually, something that the Zohar brings that you can see, the Zohar says, actually I didn't mention this in the teachings, I should have, that you can see sometimes, the Zohar says, that a very ignorant, uncouth kind of person or couple give birth to a very lofty soul. So even though the garment of the soul was not because they're very uncouth, right? Not refined, but the essence of the soul, since that doesn't come from the parents, that comes from God, that was very lofty soul. So we see that those things can happen. So again, if there's nida or any other things that were a question, meaning a woman who didn't go to the mikvah after the menstrual cycle, so then it'll be about the garment, which is not the identity and the essence of the person, but the expression of the soul. Okay. Thank you. Anything else, Joshua?
Yeah, thank you. Because also I don't know where it's mentioned, but because if the forefathers Chas v'shalom again, do something wrong, then the future generations also have to bear. I don't know which parsha it is mentioned, but it is mentioned somewhere. I think 2 or 3 generations, it's a carry forward effect. That's
I'm not clear I'm not clear to the reference, but if you find something, let me know.
Sure. Because from blemish point of view, so you're saying the soul wouldn't be blemish if the mother does not go to the mikvah or something like that.
So again, the essence of the soul is the Jewish soul from a Jewish mother, but then the garment, which the garment means sort of the way the expression of that soul. In other words, it'll be more unrefined.
Right.
That's what it means. It'll be an unrefinement. Now, unrefinement doesn't mean that a person has freedom of choice and they can refine themselves. Right? It means you're starting with a what's it called? Well, what do you call in golf? In golf, a handicap, right?
Okay.
You're starting with a handicap, right? Well, think about it. The handicap even begins earlier when we're talking about divine service of God, right? That there's some souls that are the brain, that in the 9 months of gestation, in the metaphor, right, some develop to be holy, righteous people, and some develop to be simple people, and that's the nature of the soul that is handicapped compared to lofty souls. But the handicap doesn't mean that you have less value or less purpose. You have a different purpose, just like the brain has a different purpose than the heart, and the heart has a different purpose than the arm. And then the torso, or all of it is necessary in the full completion of the Jewish people, and every one of us hence have our unique role that we need to play as a result, which is great.
Right. So basically, you can overcome the handicap.
Yeah, handicap. But remember, the handicap doesn't mean less value. Handicap means, and it's only, the handicap is less obvious connection to God. You have to work on it. If your garment is stained, so you have you're less cleansed, you have a handicap that you need to cleanse to have a better connection. So that's the same thing here. Right, that's the same thing, but you still have that divine soul, you still have that Jewish soul, and that's equal, because that's the seed that is always there of the Father, even when it's developed into a full fetus in utero. Does that make sense?
Yep. Because I'll share something very quickly, because there's a Rabbi who came in Edgware. I live in London, and he used to meet people and give brachas. And
right.
So he actually, this is personal, but he told a woman that she said she had some issues in the family, with her husband. But he mentioned that if you start going to the mikvah, your marital problems will be solved.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Yes,
Thank you so much.
absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. Ernie, so a mother that's Catholic and a father that's Jewish, how are the children? Well, the children are not Jewish, and they're Catholic because the mother is Catholic. So the child isn't Jewish and should be raised, I don't know whether Catholic or not, but definitely shouldn't be raised Jewish. And that's important actually, because then if you raise that child Jewish, because after all the father is Jewish and he's, maybe very proud of being Jewish, which he should be, which is wonderful, but the child's not Jewish, so don't raise the child Jewish, right? You're confusing that child. It's not fair to that child to confuse them. Not fair. Michelle, give me just one quick second. When a child has a non-Jewish mother, is a Jewish father not allowing the Jewish soul to come into this world? Yes, of course. It's the Jewish seed they have been wasting. Absolutely correct, Vida. Okay, Michelle, please share.
Hi, Rabbi.
Freilich and Hanukkah, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Happy Hanukkah. I just wanted to respond, if I could,
Sure.
to what you just said. You said a Catholic mother and a Jewish father should not be raising a child Jewish.
Right.
And I have a problem with this.
Go ahead.
Yes, the child isn't Jewish, but if the father feels so close to his Judaism that he wants to raise this child with some awareness and identity of being Jewish, surely that will bring the child's soul closer to the religion, and therefore a possible conversion would take place. They would want that themselves, knowing about the religion.
Right. So, first of all,
Do this in a way that isn't confusing the child, but bringing the child into the religion, welcoming the child, therefore, hopefully, they would take it upon themselves to say, I want to do this all the way, 100%.
very good question. Excellent. So let's take this apart, in a very honest way. This child is not Jewish. And right now, to raise them Jewish is, isn't fair to the child because they're not Jewish. You're confusing them. Because you have a hope because it's important to you as a father. Well, first of all, you made your choices. So, there's consequences to choices. That's first of all. But even if it is really important to you, so then have your wife convert. Then have your wife convert with the child. Then fine. If the wife is converting with the child, then by all means, then then fine. But you're raising them, and the non-Jewish mother is not converting, and you're saying it's really important to you. Well, obviously, it's not so important to you. You can't say that it's so important. If it's so important, okay, whatever happened. But now, so now, if such a person came to me, if such a person came to me and they said, I want, I want, the mother of this child to my wife, or whatever, not really according to Jewish law called a wife, because a Jew can't marry a non-Jew. It's not called a matrimony in Jewish law, or whatever. That's not the point here. But if that father came to me and said, I want to inspire her, so I would bring them aboard and try to inspire them with with Judaism, inspire her so that way she would want to convert. After all, he's Jewish. It's important to him, right? So I would do that. But to not do that, keep your wife as not Jewish, and raise your child as a Jew without going through a process of conversion, that's not fair. Not fair to the child. It's very confusing. What, because you want that child later to convert? How do you know that's what the child wants? Like, because you want to set it up for them that they will afterwards? I mean, that's all about you. What about the child? I mean, the child's not Jewish. You know, it's not the child's 50% Jewish because the father's Jewish. The child's 100% not Jewish. 100%. It's a situation here of a Jewish father and a Jewish mother. Okay, so you want her to convert, or she's even interested maybe to look into it, to dabble into it. Fine, that's honest, and that's a path. That's a possibility. Does that make sense, Michelle?
Yes, Rabbi, but
I know it's tough. I know it's a tough thing. I know this is a tough issue.
it takes the birth of a child for a man to realize how important his Jewish roots are.
I'm not complaining about that at all, and I'm not arguing that point at all. My only argument is that if you are sincere in wanting to have a Jewish life, so then bring your wife to convert, or she should come on her own if that's what she wants, and at least go through the process. So then that makes sense. I understand. This is, by the way, this is a very emotionally charged issues. I get that 100%. And I'm speaking about it in a very kind of black and white way. But dealing with the person, I would try to help them as much as possible, but help them not to do something that would be inappropriate, but something that would be very appropriate. Which is, if the mother's interested, okay, I'm here to help you to look into Judaism. Absolutely, that's the way we need to go. All right.
Rabbi, is this related? Sorry, is this related to Klipa Noiga? I mean, so.
But the merit, no, that's klipas, shalish klipas atzmius. That's complete, negativity.
Right.
Can I ask one more question, please?
Sure, go ahead.
I just wanted to know, can we access our divine soul through the act of sexual relations, the intimacy?
I'm sorry, say that again, I didn't catch it.
The connection is of a godly one when we have sexual relations.
Right.
So I wanted to know, do we access our divine soul through this act?
It depends. It depends what's motivating you. Most likely it's it's definitely the animal soul and it's animal desire, right? That's for sure. The godly soul is if you're mindful. The access of the godly soul is if you have mindfulness during relations. That there's it's meant to be a divine union and not just a physical pleasure, which will express itself by giving pleasure to your partner rather than you're just seeking pleasure. That's one of the ways it'll express itself. But it's by having mindfulness. That's the key. Is the mindfulness to have over here during relations. Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Luz.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Luz.
Rabbi Klein,
Yes.
you have questions on Facebook?
Ernie's asking if there's a fee for converting. Yes, there is. I don't, depends. It varies. Rena has a question.
Also, can a pagan become become a Jew?
Can a what?
Can a pagan become a Jew?
Yes. Yes.
And Rena has a
Yes, if a mother converts, is the child Jewish? Can the child be raised Jewish? The child also has to convert. If the child is underage, under bar and bat mitzvah, 12 and 13, then it's together with the mother, but it's in the process of the mother together going to the mikvah. And then that child needs to accept it upon themselves afterwards, when they become bar and bat mitzvah. Yeah, thank you, Rena. Okay, last question. Luz, go ahead.
Hello, Rabbi.
Hello.
Have to everybody happy Hanukkah. Okay, Rabbi, the matrilineal and patrilineal lines. The father transfers, for example, if somebody's a Cohen, a Levite, and all that.
Right.
And the mother transfers the Jewishness, but we know that Abraham was not born Jew, and we know that the matrilineal line was codified in the Mishnah, but it wasn't that way before. When did that change?
When the Torah was given at Mount Sinai, so it was in the Torah that, that's when we got our Jewish soul, at Mount Sinai. And that's when it was based on a Jewish mother. Before that, Judaism was based on, if you bought into the belief system and you were sort of, a follower or a believer in God and a believer of the destiny of the Abrahamic people. So then you were part of, but that definition changed at Mount Sinai with the giving of the Torah, so much so that Moses became himself a convert. Everybody at Mount Sinai became like a convert. Even Moses, the holy, righteous Moses, became a convert. Why? Because then it was imbued, the divine soul with us, in us. Thank you, Louis. Very good question.
So this is part of the oral tradition. It is not in the written tradition. It was codified. And
No, it's in the written. It's a verse in the Torah that the sages.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just don't have it at the tip of my tongue. I'd have to look it up. Somewhere, I think in the book of Numbers. I think it's in the book of Numbers, if I'm not mistaken. But I have to find the verse. I don't remember.
Another comment, Rabbi. I think the confusion isn't there something for descendants of people that went through the Holocaust? Isn't there something through the father if for them to be able to I think be able to go through a process of conversion easier than a person who doesn't have any Jewish ancestors? Isn't there something going on in Israel with that? I thought I read something about that some time ago. Oh, plus the Reform movement. I think the Reform movement does accept a Jewish father to transfer Jewishness. So there's a lot of confusion around that.
Not from the Torah, there isn't confusion. Not from, observance of Torah and mitzvahs, there isn't a confusion. There's a confusion some people might have because, you can go on online and get opinions on anything and everything from so many people, and therefore you can get very confused. But if you're looking at Torah true Judaism, there's no confusion. There is no confusion. And this is the way we've been for the last 3,000 years, and that hasn't changed.
Rabbi, Linda has a question on Instagram too.
Okay, I really need to go. What about Jewish ethnicity, bloodline? So we spoke about that there's no such thing. Once Torah was given at Mount Sinai, Jewish people became bound up essentially through the soul and not through any kind of adherence to a belief system. which is, by the way, every other religion and faith. You know, you're bound up to it by your belief and adherence to it. But here it's not that way. Okay, Marcy, and then I must bid you a good day until you come to the Rambam at 1 o'clock. Go ahead, Marcy.
Well, I want to respect your time, so if you need to defer to tomorrow, that's okay. As you may be aware, today is Hanukkah, and I would like to buy myself a sefer for Hanukkah. All of the Jewish presses are having Hanukkah sales, and I was wondering, assuming I already own a copy of Tanya, what book would you recommend that I consider?
Ooh, I don't know. That's a very good question. Excellent question. I don't know what kind of thing you're looking for, and what would be something you'd be more particularly interested in. You know, are you looking for stories? Are you looking for Jewish law? Are you looking for, so. If you're looking something for Jewish law, maybe look into something about the laws of Shabbos. If you're looking into something about, more stories of, let's say, the righteous, maybe stories of the Baal Shem Tov, or the Alter Rebbe, about his life and times. After all, we're learning Tanya, so that might be something. If you're looking for, I don't know, some thoughts. I have to think more. All right. Rabbi Miller's Practical Tanya. That's very good. Yeah, exactly. All right. If I didn't get to everybody, my apologies. But Baruch Hashem, I think we did pretty good.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you all. Freilich and Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah. We should celebrate and have, and we'll to be continued.
Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah. Yeah.
Hanukkah.
Be well.